Yeah,
I
they
must have
just
missed it.
put you in a generated email that's just blasting it out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Oh yeah.
we're gonna be 5 minutes past the hour. Um, and I know where case studies was voted. Um, Sam, I know you had a couple you wanted to do. If it's all right with you guys, why don't we just jump on in and run through it?
Okay, sweet. I'm gonna share my screen. My Zoom is being super laggy right now, so hopefully it comes through correctly. So let me know when you guys see this.
Yep.
How do I move the Zoom thing at the top? My mouse isn't even appearing. It's being so late.
What are you're saying where it says the site is trying to open the Zoom meetings?
Yeah, give me 1 second. Let me try to reshare it without the Zoom meeting stuff because I have the tabs open at the top and it had like the mute, start video, and participants and stuff like that. Did anybody else have one that they wanted to share right away while I'm working through all of this stuff? If not, I can call in and kind of explain my thought process rather than showing visuals. Either one works.
Nate, did you want to run through yours?
Bullshit. That's all I got to say.
Oh man.
So I guess I'm starting to come across a little bit, and I'd love to hear from other folks. And maybe this is just sort of like the reality of the marketplace we're in nowadays. So for those that were on the call last month, I had talked about getting ready for finals presentation. It was like $120 million law firm. So good opportunity, kind of right in our wheelhouse. It's the largest law firm in Maine. And the reason we had opened that opportunity was that I was doing some 5,500 sleuthing where I was looking up specifically for like Vanguard index funds that had more than $5 million, but were still in the Admiral share class. Because for a lot of like smaller plan advisory shops that don't work on big plans, they don't realize that Vanguard does have a lower cost index share class, the institutional with a $5 million minimum, and it doesn't automatically flip. And so it's a really easy conversation starter to say that, hey, your advisor's clearly asleep at the wheel, and this is like the easiest fiduciary piece to expose because you have two identical funds, one more expensive than the other. How could you possibly justify using the more expensive? So I had done some of that, identified this as one that had more expensive options than they needed. Turns out they didn't have an advisor at all. They have an ERISA team that was handling it. And ask any ERISA attorney, they're the smartest ones in the room. And so when I brought it to their attention, they had said, "Oh, crap. Okay, maybe we're not investment experts, and we need to interview advisors." And so naturally, our firm was invited to participate. Um, did the whole song and dance. I felt like presented well. I was the one presenting, so of course I thought I did well. But overall, good vibes, good energy. Ultimately, we lost. We were runner up. We lost to an advisor who came in for $100 million plan, came in with a fixed $10,000 fee.
Jeez.
And we had already priced it relatively competitively because it's obviously would have been a flagship account. There's going to be some other opportunities there, either from referrals or whatnot. And I'm starting to see more and more of that. And I think what they're doing is basically like, almost like a 338 approach where they're just running their standard RPEG, like template reports, shooting it off to the committee with like little to no other work. And I think all of us know that the investments is just such a small piece of the value we bring. And I guess I thought I had communicated that appropriately, but I'm curious to hear from other folks if they run against that, and if so, what you typically sort of part of your pitch to make sure you don't get undercut for somebody like that.
Man, my heart breaks for you. That's frustrating, one, because you think you have an edge just for bringing them, the awareness of their liability, right? You think no matter what comes in, they kind of owe you one, right? Secondly, that fee consolidation, I feel like it's hurting everybody in the industry versus helping. Like that advisor coming in at 10,000, I get the idea of, that 338, that's all they're doing. But as you said, there's more to us as consultants, as advisors, than just the investment portion. In that case, it's like you almost see as 338 investment fiduciaries just coming on, hey, 5 basis points, that's what we cost, right? Instead of like a flat $10,000 fee. I wonder how long that will last. Because in my head, the next thing that's going to happen is they're going to start calling them for other things, right? Hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? And are they going to come back with that? That's outside our scope. Like, did they really come in and say, this is all we're going to do? That's my question. I haven't necessarily run into it. But I run into like that fee consolidation of like, yeah, we still need to have some sort of, income, right? We can't just go down to $10,000 because there's other stuff that we provide besides the investments. But that's a tough one to crack. What was your service model that you came up with to provide them on an annual basis?
Yeah, so they were pretty explicit about not looking for any employee education. So it was mostly around sort of the just committee meetings. I'll sort of quickly run through this. I'll jump over like the section about us, but just kind of talks about our services and whatnot. Jump all the way ahead. So we had pitched them sort of our kind of pitch is around sort of these 3 pillars of retirement plan success. And we have 3 dedicated team members for every one of our clients that supports them in these 3 areas. You kind of heard this spiel from me before around the fiduciary, administrative support, and employee education. And then we sort of have the 3 folks that would be working on that account. And we had tried to really highlight throughout these slides, like all the things we're doing over and above the investments, which maybe came back to hurt us because maybe they felt like they didn't need all those. And why get a Ferrari when all you need is a Honda Civic? And talked a little bit about employee education. And then I tried to really map out sort of like what working with us would look like, and as sort of an example of some of the different reports we'd be able to do. So any RPAG member hopefully is familiar with sort of the PRISM fee benchmarking report. So showed that. And we really tried to actually pull as many concrete insights that we could possibly get just based off their 5,500. So they didn't have fee levelization. So we talked a little bit about this idea of fee equity, right? If you have some participants subsidizing the fees for others. And we talked about utilizing a lower cost share class lineup. So not only did they have lower cost index funds, but they also had CITs available for the T row price. So would have saved them like $30,000 annualized with the exact same investment strategy. We mapped out sort of what our investment scoring methodology is, which is in line with the RPEG IPS. We looked at some of the funds that they currently have on watch list and sort of why they are and what our recommendation potentially would be. We kind of gave an example of what that side-by-side comparison would look like. We did really focus on the investments because they knew that's what they were looking at. We did, showed an example of a stable value analysis, QDIA suitability analysis. We'd run for them. We talked a little bit about ESG integration because they're really big on like DEI. And so we have sort of a proprietary ESG process for how we overlay certain options in there. We'd spend even time looking at plan design benchmarking and the capabilities we have there. So we actually went through the 5500, the audit report, which has certain plan design information in there. We summarize it for them and included what the law firm industry benchmark report would show, and included some, analysis around areas for improvement. And then we've gone through, I think, again, you've seen this, some of our sort of committee level documentation that they can use to report up. So, yeah, I felt like, I don't know, what are you going to do? I almost want to start my own like litigation firm where I just sue plan sponsors that don't hire us.
Where did you come in fee wise? I didn't see that on that fee slide.
Again, we priced it to win it. It was only semi-annual meetings. They didn't want any employee education. So what we would typically do in sort of that $50 million plus, there was a point in time where we were always fixed fee. We're trying to start to get away from that because once you get, especially in that 100 million plus, there is actually some liability there. And as plan assets continue to grow at a fixed fee, there's no way to quantify or to monetize that increase in liability. So we're moving more towards a tiered approach where we have a fixed fee that covers the cost for us to deliver our service, and then an asset-based fee which covers the liability associated with our fiduciary 321 or 338 overlay. And so for this plan, which again I still felt like was competitive, we were at $20,000 fixed fee and a 2 basis point asset-based fee. So for 120 million, we're at like 40 to 50,000, but 10,000, fixed. I think one of the challenges we ran into is because they had ERISA attorneys overseeing it, they were defining our fee as the inverse of the value they brought. So the greater our fee, the less value they were bringing to the committee. And conversely, for 10,000, I think the way they probably sold it, and this is me just assuming all attorneys are egomaniacs, is, oh, well, we can do everything. All we need is this one little slice. So why do we need to pay anything more than like 10 grand for that little slice?
Yeah, well, that's pretty. That 20,000. That's pretty competitive, man. That's tough.
Yeah. Do you know who won the plan? Like what firm?
Yeah, so we went up against I believe it was Sageview Cap Trust, and then ultimately it was a small firm right in our neighborhood that won it, which is like the ultimate heartbreak. It's called Guidance Point Retirement Services. They're mostly a wealth shop, but they do have a retirement plan arm. And I guess I did some, because again, I'm sort of a spiteful bastard. So I went through 5500s and found all of the plans they advise on because they are their own RIA. And so if it's a large file and they're paid out of plan assets, that's public information. And I guess this is their MO. They're at between 5 and 10 grand fixed across all of their plans. And I did find a couple that had investments in more expensive options they needed to. And I wanted to send them to them so bad and just say, see, not all advisors are created equally, all right? But
Nate, do you think that, I mean, that business model that they're running seems like it's hard to build a business that way. So to me, it seems like their MO is like, let's just get in the door and then we're gonna, if we bring 1 or 2 of these attorneys on board as wealth clients, we've more than paid for our time.
Yeah.
I view the retirement plan business in a way like that. But I think that presentation was so good. The slides were so good. I can't imagine that your competitor was anywhere near that good. So it just makes me think that the advisor basically bought the business and the committee just wanted to check a box and have someone on it. And that's what that was.
Yeah, I've heard that a couple different times with wealth shops that have some sort of retirement plan business where they're just going in, just trying to get the assets afterwards, just trying to create the relationships with the lawyers in this situation too. Yeah. Trying to create them as wealth clients rather than kind of viewing it as truly being the retirement plan advisor.
I had a sneaking suspicion I thought it would have been like a cap trust because I'm looking at it as a lost leader play. You just discount retirement and then make it up on wealth. But similar theories all around here on it. I'd
Yeah,
be
we had
really curious to know their service model, but I think another thing that comes to mind for me is it's a a legal firm, right? And they're all much more intelligent than all of us on all things. So that might have been another piece of the puzzle where they go, this is cheaper. We got this. This is maybe easier. But do you know the service that was offered for 10 grand?
I don't. I looked at their
Okay.
website. They're an FI 360 shop.
Hmm.
And so my only guess is, and I guess, if we took the approach that all we were going to do is run like a quarterly scorecard and just email it to the client and at most maybe present it for, an hour, a couple times a year, I guess we could do it for $10,000. I wouldn't feel good about that, but it's almost like just a bolt-on 321, but with a fixed fee instead of an asset-based fee. But I guess the other side is the advisor just must not view the fiduciary liability as a tangible threat for them, because at some point, even if, I don't know. Yeah, who knows?
I missed the part. Is the advisor going to be a 321 or 338?
321.
That'll be fun.
Yeah,
Are any of you guys doing that where you're kind of like a bolt-on 338 for other wealth advisors?
We do 338 on everything. Like,
So
But like
easier.
if so we ran across it. There's a shop in town around here that's a RPAG firm that partners with wealth management advisors that like have the relationship with the business owner, and then they just get like 8 bips for being the 338 and just manage the investments.
I am a bolt-on through three for one plan, and I basically did it as a favor, and was hoping that it was gonna turn into. It's probably 2 years ago I took it on, and each time I meet, once a year, I try to convince them to hire me as a full-time advisor and do
Yeah.
employee education. So I kind of did it hoping to, um, get paid a lot more on it, and it didn't work out. And I'm thinking of terminating that. So I don't. It's hard to. It's just whatever I'm charging on that is not worth it almost.
Yeah, we don't do bolt-on.
we've split with other advisors where they have the relationship, but we handle the whole plan. Any individual business goes to that advisor. There's a group downstate Illinois doing kind of what the group that won your plan, Nate, where they're running, $5 grand flat for plans. And they kept doing it, building it up, and now are getting out of the business because they kept getting calls for ancillary service, thinking they would subsidize their wealth shop, and they didn't have a clue what they were doing on the 401k side of it. I think they also had some pressure from higher ups too to partner with retirement plan specialists.
Yeah.
That seems like the perfect opportunity to go back to them in a year from now. Is like, hey, did you get what you paid for?
Oh, don't you worry, I will be. I'll be checking that 5,500 every year.
I was just gonna say
Changes
you
they
gotta wait
made.
till that 5,500 comes out
Oh,
to
yeah.
see what they did. Yeah.
October 16th, they'll be on their ass.
Well, Nate, thanks for sharing. That's unfortunate that you didn't win that one, because it sounds like you did your due diligence and you put your best foot forward. Obviously there's more out there to get, but that's a tough one to swallow.
Yeah.
Sam, you got your stuff ready?
Yeah, I can go through a couple. I'm just going to talk through it because I'm on my phone, my computer. I don't know for what it is. I just got a new computer like 6 months ago, and I had this problem with my old one too, but virtual meetings and like my camera and stuff like that just so screwed up. But we've got 2 that we're kind of like working on right now. I mentioned the one with TrueStage, and didn't sound like anybody had any experience with them. We finally got like kind of like the plan level details of it, and TrueStage and the advisors like giving away the plan essentially. So the plan went there like back in 2019, and I started prospecting them like in 2020, not knowing that they had moved, and the plan sponsor was like, hey, we just did like a full revamp like 6 months ago. Call me back in a couple years and we can have a conversation about it. So including advisory fee, total plan fees is like 0.35. So advisor, record keeper, and their TPA, and then it's all Vanguard funds. So it's like truly not a cost play anymore from that perspective of trying to reduce costs. And they don't have much utilization in target date funds. So I think we're going to go at it from that perspective of the guy that we met with kind of talked us through that by basically saying that our advisor doesn't really come around anymore because our employees don't meet with them. So it's like kind of coming at it from the standpoint of your employees don't know what they don't know by trying to break down. And we do asset allocation charts. I think I've showed it previously where it's like kind of Empower has a good one, but we create them for a lot of our clients where it's like shows the like the target date fund glide path and then where employees are at from an allocation standpoint. So we basically kind of just show that with dots all over the place, essentially saying like, this is typically what employees kind of look at it from a build out perspective when they're managing their own investments and not talking with an advisor, but wondered what you guys have done kind of in those situations with plans that you're trying to compete against. And then also, so advisory fee is like 0.15. So we wouldn't, on a $5.5 million plan, we would probably try to do 0.2. So talking through like that conversation of how do we communicate past, I mean, like from the service standpoint of meeting with their employees and monitoring their investments, that's enough, should be for 0.05, but raising a fee is never the easy side of things, obviously with our job, especially when someone's giving it away.
So I could jump in real quick. We had an advisor raise their fee, and that was post plan design conversation. Nate, I'd be curious too with like that law firm, if they were just 401k or if they had any other like, plan design considerations. But I think something that gets lost sometimes is value to the business owner. So if you're trying to compete for a higher fee, how can you make their bottom line a little better? So
Yeah,
something that we like to do, even year over year with some people is just, take a look at their census, make sure that they're still profitable, and then give them different plan design options and considerations that would give them a bigger deduction, right? So
yeah,
if you can lead with that and show value to the business owner, we've had it to where it's like, oh yeah, you saved me 30 grand. I don't care about another 10 basis points, or in your case, 5. So
yeah.
we have had easy fee increases when that's there and service doesn't come up.
Yeah, it's a weird one too, where I think when I talked to our rep from True Stage, that was CUNA, apparently that rebrand like just went through, so it's kind of confusing. But they basically said that we're extremely proactive from a repricing standpoint of benchmarking our plans and intentionally bringing down the fees, which makes sense seeing this. But end of 2023 filing, the plan was like 8.5 million. And now it's down to 5.5 million. So likely a couple rollovers out this year. So I think that could be playing into it as well, of why pricing is basically given away right now compared to what it probably was receiving 6 months ago or at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I would be at like 35 basis points for a $5 million plan. And
I would too.
I would almost,
But
yeah,
when they're
yeah.
at 15, you don't really want to come
It's hard to say, right?
Yeah.
Typically, in that scenario, when you don't have that, that variable of, maybe changing the share class like Nate did, where, he was able to show some cost savings and say, hey, I'm going to save you $30,000 in investment fees, but, I'm the person that knew where to, point in the right direction. So I need that feedback kind of thing. So yes,
Yeah.
I'm lowering that fee by 30,000, but I'm also increasing your fee 20,000. Your net, decrease is 10,000, but I'm the one that did it for you, so I'm going to get paid.
Yeah. And I'm going to keep an eye on the plan, and I'll do it again and again.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing to hammer on after.
Correct.
To enforce that point. Yep.
Correct.
And I think kind of from a transparency standpoint of like not calling his child ugly, like the plan's in an all right spot from a fee situation. So it's not really kind of that process. And it's like a safe harbor plan, low eligibility, and they only have like 40, 50 people. So from a service standpoint, I don't think it's going to be a crazy amount, but it's kind of just talking through those things and kind of just seeing where it goes. But that was a weird one. But then another one, wanted to get your guys' 2 cents on kind of how you guys have combated relationships successfully when the plan administrator or the plan contact doesn't have the relationship, business owner has the relationship with the advisor. So a different one that we're dealing with is a $7.5 million plan on Lincoln, and total plan fees aren't egregious. It's like advisor and record keeper at like 0.75, and we have like quotes and we have options for them to like reduce it down to 0.35, 0.3. But then it comes back to, how do you fire the relationship that's the business owner's wealth advisor? Obviously, you can try to get in there on the wealth side of things and try to create the relationship there, but those are even harder to move than plan advisor relationship switches. So has anybody worked through that successfully or have any thoughts there?
Way we typically approach it is, just to be sort of very self-effacing and say, listen, we're not trying to, replace old relationships. If you have an advisor on the individual side that you trust, I mean, that's worth its weight in gold. But the reality is the 401k industry is evolving at such a rate between all the recent legislation, the fiduciary oversight, that it's gone to a point now where it's really, worth working with a true specialist. I think if you tee it up that way, you don't really piss off the current manager. Most wealth managers honestly kind of want nothing to do with retirement plans. As long as their clients don't call them about it, they're fine to keep it and keep collecting their fee. But I think most of them recognize it's sort of a 600-pound gorilla just waiting to strike at some point. And so I think if you approach it that way, it's the best way to do it. There's no perfect way, because at some point that advisor has to get fired from the 401k. And then it's sometimes even worth, as part of it, connecting with the advisor. You have to be careful here, but just acknowledging that, listen, we're a 401k shop. We're not looking to try to replace you on the well side. And again, just kind of have a very transparent conversation around that.
Out of curiosity, what brought you to the table on that opportunity in the first place again?
Cold call. I've been cold calling them for like 3 years, and their itemization on their 5,500 had it just itemized out as so Lincoln retains the full fee and then pays the advisor from that. So the 5,500 had Lincoln at like 75 bips on 7.5 million, which is high. So we came at it from a pricing standpoint of trying to look at it from a total fee perspective of, if this is just the provider's fee, you've got your advisor's fee on top of it, plus the investment. So thankfully we were still able to be relevant and still cut costs pretty significantly, knowing that fee was itemized out for the advisor and Lincoln. But it's like the CFO is on our side. She does not like the provider, doesn't really like the service, and knows that the advisor isn't really doing much. And like from a education standpoint and talking with the employees, like it's all just truly the relationship with the business owner. So it's kind of trying to bridge that gap and trying to equip her with as much material as possible. And you've got crappy funds in the plan, like there's 10 funds that are failing the criteria for RPAG, plus you got revenue sharing. So like the whole entire thing more or less is a disaster, but it's just trying to equip her with enough information to kind of be on our side enough past the cost savings of like nearly in half.
Got it. But then you have to break up the golfing buddies. That's
exactly.
Yeah. Well, you just have to acknowledge and validate that relationship, right? Hey, we're not coming in to replace Tom, Dick, and Larry from XYZ Wealth Management as your golfing buddy. He'll still be there on your individual side, but there is a focus on 401k, and then just, demonstrating your value of plan design consulting, investment monitoring. Like Nate said, there's a grill in the room that guy at the wealth shop probably doesn't want to deal with small participants calling them and asking them about their $40,000 plan balance, knowing that they're never going to be a retail client.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully we can just get an at bat. I think if we can get our foot in the door to at least have a conversation with them. She sent us all the information and we've had a couple conversations, but we haven't met the business owners. So I think if we talk through all of that stuff, I think we've got a pretty good chance at winning it. But two little bit quirky ones that we're working through as all new opportunities are, obviously.
Do
Yeah,
you
that was
know
my
the advisor?
question.
No, don't know the
Oh.
advisor on either one. I just know it's a Morgan Stanley advisor, but I don't know who it is. But both business owners are like, well, the business owner for this one that has the relationship is essentially like 1 foot out the door, like mid-70s, not really doing anything, not really around. So it's kind of hard from a communication standpoint to kind of get them involved. They're like, well, it's been fine forever. Like, why would we change anything now? And it's just weird.
Yeah.
Have you just asked them like, hey, can we meet the business owners? Can we just, hear directly from us?
Yeah, we basically said, she was like, I want to make sure on the front end that it's like worth our while and all of that stuff. And I sent her like blind proposals of like half of fee savings compared to where they were at and kind of just requesting times and all of that stuff. So I think, I mean, that's worth its weight obviously there. So we're just trying to get something on the calendar to at least communicate kind of the value past what the advisor is currently doing.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, too, if you're trying to make a beeline for the business owner and the other advisor too, it's good to shroud a little bit because if you give them everything, they will just say thank you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're out. But I would say hold a few cards and just say, yeah, I can definitely help the bottom line and a lot of value since you're doing the CFO conversation. For your admin, assigned admin. And by the way, I love that you cold called them and have the op. I think that's fucking badass. And then you can just say Arissa DOL, if you want to spook them. And then just say, yeah, no, I'd love to have a conversation. I think I could help the bottom line, help the 401k plan and value for everyone in it. Just need like 10, 15 minutes, business owner and the wealth guy. And
Yeah, it's been a funny one. I've tried to cold call her for literally years and email and just really haven't had anything. And I've stopped in to their office or to their plant like 4 different times and talked to her 4 different times. So I'm gonna give her another email and then it's gonna go to the point where I'll just stop in again and just try to have a conversation with her and just be like, where are we at? I don't want to keep spinning my wheels and wasting your time, but also wasting my time as well, in addition to it, because she's been super responsive when I stop in. We've had like 15-minute conversations every time. So it's just confusing how it's like for a couple weeks she was really responsive and sending me all the plan materials and reaching out to the providers and doing all that stuff, and then just kind of radio silent the last like 2 weeks.
yeah.
So I actually have a similar to piggyback off that scenario, Sam. I just got a nice win off a cold email from like 4 years ago. Law firm plan that we got in a meeting with right away. He basically kind of like committed in that meeting and then just went cold for weeks, never, finally responded and be like, let's just try again next year. Here we are 4 years later. I was following up like once a year via email, and then I would say like, hey, I'm going to be in your neck of the woods on this day at this time. Let me know if I can stop in. And then randomly 6 weeks ago or so, he was like, yeah, come on in. And it's converting now, January 1. But it's crazy. He's a high-powered attorney. He's a managing partner of a firm. And he just needed like to be handheld the entire time. Every time we needed anything signed, like I would have to like send him an email with subject all caps, like sign this now, deadline is today. Like it's crazy. Some people just need to be sold that way, whereas other people are just more proactive about it. But
Yeah.
I would say keep at it, and I bet you get that one day.
Yeah, I think so too. She's newer in the role too. She's been there for like 2 years. So I think part of it could just be like from a relationship standpoint. I don't know if she like feels that she is at the point to like have that conversation with business owners. So I think that could be a part of it too. But to your point, I mean, all of these are We always say it in like all of our pitches is like 401k obviously isn't what you think about every single day. We recognize the importance level of kind of where we're at, but in these situations, like it's significant dollars that can be saved, and to help out your employees, like recognizing the magnitude of it too. And not everyone is quick by any means.
That also might
Is
be a
anybody else
spot-
working on stuff?
Sam, real quick, that might be a spot where you could drive a wedge in there, is asking the business owner if the participants are getting the same level of service from that advisor as the business owner. And if he has a paternalistic instinct in him, you know, and they're not, you could say that.
Yeah, for sure. Cause that's what the market that we're playing in is like the 2 to 10, and that's what you get all the time. It's like business owners relationship, and you're not really dealing with kind of like big companies to a certain extent. So it's always their relationship, and then the individuals aren't really getting anything from the fee that they're paying, whether they like it or not.
I know we've got like an hour worth of awesome content in 40 minutes, but does anyone else have any case studies or anecdotes on interactions they've had?
I'd say one thing that we continue to have success with is kind of just, it's not easy work, but just working through like large plan filer 5500s. And what we've seen a lot of success with recently is kind of the recognizing or looking at the audits and seeing what plans auto enroll their folks, and then what plans don't have target date funds. So like if they're getting auto enrolled like into moderate risk-based portfolios, or if they're kind of just a core lineup or something like that, just asking that process. And we've had a decent amount of success there. Those are very few and far and in between in terms of which ones you come across, but those are great opportunities. So if you aren't kind of looking through that stuff, I would highly recommend it, because they're out there. Principal's a big one that we have been going after that has been doing it a lot. So I don't know if they're big in your area, but definitely be on the lookout for that stuff as you guys are working through and prospecting stuff.
Sam, do you have a specific tool that you use to go through 5500s, or are you just going and looking, on the Form 5500 search?
Yeah, it's a great question. We use Larkspur.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Sorry, I was gonna bring up, because I know you can get those reports from a wholesaler if you have a relationship with them.
Yeah.
We used to use Plan Pro, but which was great. We loved it, but then we saw Empower, one of the Empower wholesalers who we work with, sent over, I think it's Rick Strema, but it's just pretty much Larkspur. And so that's super helpful getting the filters all going. But if you have the budget, I think that Plan Pro is very helpful. The data might be a little bit behind. And every once
I'll
in a
look that
while,
up.
if you set a couple of your prospects as, whatever leads or Markham, you find a way that you get, 100 emails in 30 seconds from them. But other than that, really cool, powerful tool, can generate a lot of reports, can project out. I don't know how accurate it is, but, can lay out a bunch of future projections about how much money you could save this plan over the next 5-10 years, inserting your plan lineup. It's a pretty cool tool. Just, if you want to look into it.
Yeah, I'll look into it for sure. Yeah, we use Larkspur, and we kind of can code into like specific like asset values or employee counts, obviously, to try to get to the large plan filers. But you can also, if you guys haven't used it yet, but you can also key in like make sure that employees have emails, which has been helpful for that, where you basically get a list of all of the plans that meet that criteria, and then all of the ones that Larkspur has emails for. So if you guys are doing like cold email campaigns and that stuff, it provides you with a bunch of emails as well.
Isn't there, I think I saw there's a upcoming change, I think for next year where you have to like put a code on that's specific to your plan document provider, which will be able to provide some sort of indication
Oh, wow.
around who the record keeper and or
On
third-party administrator
on
is?
short form, right? Yes.
Yeah.
That's real. I think
Wow,
already
that's sweet.
you can already look into that.
So will that not come out until like October next year when they're filing again?
I know there's some like we
I
found
think I think it depends on when they filed. If they were like late filing their 2023, so because I think it came out right towards the middle or end of October, right around the deadline. And then yeah, I think for most of them, it will likely be for the 2024 plan year, which will be,
it's game changer.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
90% of the market's open now for we should do that as a study group. Maybe we could just come up with short form filing, strategy brain session. We'll put it up to the vote. This isn't democracy, but Tyler, if you don't mind adding that to one of the topics, that would be cool.
I'll be that.
Nice. Well, I mean, we can give back 15 minutes to everyone's calendar. Want to get some jumping jacks in before your next call, or if anyone wants to pivot topics. But honestly, this was awesome. I really enjoyed this. Yeah, so many of those things are classic. The one that interests me the most is like the fee compression, because there's always that balance of your compensation versus service. And I think a common mistake that people do is they promise, the sun and the moon and the stars for service, right? And then, oh, they won it, and it's like, oh my God, I won it. And it's like you evaporate your time. And Nate, like with your example, where it's a flat fee of 10 grand for what, $130 million plan in a legal firm. I mean, that's wild. So, my intuition was it's cap trust. That's their minimum fee, right? Not for $130 million plan, but like, because they're going to do a loss leader on wealth. But I feel like, because as you all know, like we focus on, we see a lot of opportunity in the startup space. And, that is where that question of service relative to compensation is the most pronounced, right? Because X amount of bips on nothing is nothing. But I think it's going to be, I don't know how well it's going to play out for that tiny firm if they're quoting 5 to 10 grand on these mega plans. And I really want to know what their service model is like. Like it's very interesting. But they're gonna get buried after a few clients. Like, for what? Like sell 10 of those, you make 100 grand. What are you doing? Like, you're miserable and like you have no money. So it's very curious to be that you lost to that kind of model. So anyway, I'm going to be very cognizant of that. That's a big takeaway for me there, personally.
Another thing to put out there is like I know Nate kind of showed the plan benchmarking stuff from like a cost standpoint from the providers, but the record keeping space, I mean, we're still in awe as to what some of those providers are pricing plans at. The last like couple months, we've seen like crazy savings. Like we took a $1 million plan that had like 20 employees. Like, yeah, it's not hard to record keep it, but they came back at like 0.12. So it's something to be cognizant of for some of your relationships, whether they really want to or not. We've been starting to kind of just be proactive with that and just get a couple ideas, a couple different quotes, just to provide that, because that's not, I mean, that's just going to keep going, that fee compression standpoint. So it's just trying to be proactive with it versus having another advisor come in, cold calling based off of one of your providers that's overpriced from the record keeping standpoint, just trying to, because that market is just crazy right now.
Yeah. You know, Sam, like with I think a lot of good classic stuff got uncovered, like whether it was the Vanguard Admiral shares or whether it was, you know, just saying, hey, what about you got an A share in there? What are you doing? You know, showing the value with the makeup of the plan of itself. But another thing that I would encourage the group more broadly on is if the advisor was asleep at the wheel for that long, right? When's the last time do you think, let alone RFPs or like, you know, service providers, but when's the last time that they looked and did a review of their plan design, right? Because remember, the deduction is the thing that drives the business owner to make the decision, right? Then it goes, you know, attracting and retaining top tier talent. I truly believe that. So I would think too, that is another way that you can show an incredible amount of value, even though it's a little more of a lift. You know, in addition to efficiencies in service and product. But that's something too where it makes you that much more active as an advisor. And especially in the 1 to 5 million space, you know, these are business owners that, you know, it's not Fortune 1000 where they're going to be talking about wellness. They're very focused on their bottom line. Yeah, just another thought.
One maybe last comment. So one of the things we're working on to kind of overcome sort of this being undercut on our fee is trying to better quantify the value we bring to our clients over and above just like our sales pitch, right? Like how do we make something that's somewhat inherently intangible tangible, and trying to really look across our entire book of business. And so we're looking at all of the fees for every single one of our plans relative to their Prism benchmark. And we're going to start to create some aggregate sort of average fee savings relative to what their peer group is. So we can show that, yes, like, are we going to be the cheapest advisor? No. But will your plan be the cheapest plan because we're the advisor? Hopefully, and actually showing that data to say, on average, our plans that we advise on are 20 bips below what their peer group average is. We're going to kind of create this aggregate benchmarking report we're going to call the L&H index. And then sort of the next iteration of that will be around plan design. So that's one of our big differentiators here in Maine is, you know, we advise on more plans than any other shop and by a long stretch. And so we're going to start to basically take year-end census data for every single one of our clients and create like a dashboard that shows obviously trends in plan statistics, but relative to their actual peers right here locally. So we all have access to that industry benchmarking data, but most of these companies care a lot more about what their peers are doing. That's who they're hiring against. That's who they're competing against. And so to actually be able to quantify the like, hey, for the 30 engineering firms in Maine we advise on, here's their participant stats, here's their plan design data, match, all of that. So really trying to leverage our local size from a data perspective. And I think that will be valuable both in terms of articulating our value prop on the fee side, but then also in really helping to differentiate what we can do from a plan design and plan stats benchmarking perspective relative to their actual peers, not their national peers. And that those plan sponsor reports, some of them, you know, by the time you look at industry and plan size, the sample size is like 3 plans. And it's like, how really meaningful is that? And half the answers are like, I'm unsure. So it's sometimes it's so frustrating. It's like, this is not material. So it's just a project we're working on. I'll certainly, once it's ready, report out on it. But it's something I'm excited about to never lose to a fixed flat fee again.
Yeah, I love that.
Cool.
Like engineers are totally going to lean in when you go, well, here's what the other engineer firms around you are doing. Like that's a hook. That's great. That's really cool.
Anybody is doing anything like that, I'm open to ideas. We're likely going to do it through Excel and Power BI, but if that's not the best way, let me know.
The only one I've looked at is that broad one, the plan sponsor survey, where it broke it down by industry and plan design. I've used that one a couple times, but not specific to my location.
I think the key is if you can line up the census data with the plan design data and have it be time, like in a time series, then you can
Right.
actually start to show, hey, for our plans that have automatic enrollment, here's their average participation rate versus those that don't. For our plans that added automatic enrollment, here's the average increase year over year in deferral rates, right? Like now you're starting to really show like community-based data. Plus, one of the things we always struggle with at L&H is for the employees that aren't client facing, how do we continue to kind of give them a sense of purpose around the work we do? All of us understand the impact we're making at both the companies we work with and their employees, but it's hard sometimes to communicate that internally. So when you have data like that, you can show, hey, over the last year, we were able to get 8,000 people signed up for 401k plans across all 250 plans. Here's how much the aggregate savings was. And I think you can start to put together really cool sort of retirement landscape in each of our geographical regions that I think would be meaningful both internally and externally.
Bill, I know you're familiar, but have any of you guys looked at, I know he just rebranded it, but it used to be called Fiduciary RX that Josh Hitso built. So he actually has a lot of that benchmarking data relative to your practice built. You can run consolidated reporting on your current client list. So we use it. The founder and the creator of it is a close personal friend of mine and Devin's, but he created that tool based on like Nate, some of the things that you were talking about doing. Like instead of, he used to manually create them when he was the head of his IRA or RIA, and he created a technology to basically do that. There is some overlap, I will say, like especially for those that are using RPAG, which I think most on this call are, but there is a little bit of overlap in some of the features, but we use it quite a bit. And so it's kind of subjective in some of the scoring. I will say that just like transparently, but the idea is it's all about plan health score, like independent version of that doesn't come from the record keeper. And you can match that up to a plan that you're, trying to win. So we have a ton of success just using that system on a basic level of saying like our average plan and our block of business is rated this way because it has these plan design features. It has this participation rate. It has this many participants using professionally managed options. Like we go through kind of that criteria, and then we show them how their plan matches up to that based on industry size, et cetera. And I think you could probably get pretty granular with it in terms of like making it local or specific to certain elements of your own book of business. So, I mean, that's what we've done. It does a good job, but like when we started growing our retirement plan practice, that system was like it's like pretty much not created yet. So we've been along for the ride the whole way, and it's gotten better over time. But it does have a lot of overlap with some of the other technologies that are out there. So that's one of the challenges we've seen as we grow. Is like now we have all this technology and they're all kind of trying to do the same stuff. So figuring out like what we're going to use long term, but that's a good option. I can share a sample of that for you guys if you just want to see it. It's pretty easy to pull, but that's something that we use. We've had success with it, but it's not, I would argue it's not perfect, but it could be a long-term solution to that if you find yourself recreating those types of documents over and over again, just as a time saver.
It doesn't hurt that Josh is a good guy. And then don't forget, if you like it, tell him Viking Cove sent you. You get 20% off. What we do, but
there you go. Yeah, that shameless plug.
I'm calling Josh.
Shameless
Josh right now
for savings, right?
Yeah. There you go.
But yeah, we added Josh. It was Greenspring Advisors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Yeah.
He's a good dude, and was an advisor for a long time, and then built the tech stack the way he thought it should be. And I know a lot of folks who like it as well. So we'll add him as a guest spot, to vote on. But yeah, I would second what Ryan says on that. He's definitely an innovator in the space. 2 minutes to go. Anyone got anything else, or
I'll throw out maybe a potential topic later on, which is basically content creation. Josh Itzo is a good example, right? He's, big on Twitter and does videos. And, I'm wondering how effective for you guys that's been if you've delved into that. So I'd be interested to hear more about that.
Tyler, let's add social media as a voting item. That'd be good.
Enrollments, I know got some capabilities to like do custom or have the advisor kind of create videos and throw that into their software, and you can then blast that out to participants. So
We do that quite a bit. We found it's pretty effective. It gets a lot of traction. I think a lot of the groups that we're working with, we're primarily in the under 25